All right. I primarily record or make these for family members, and they're mostly pretty young, so there's some entertaining stuff in it. So if that offends you, I'm sorry, but I uh, I had an increasing amount of prompting to share these things, and so I do that now. I don't want to, but I'm going to because I feel like I need to. So I'm going to walk you through just something I've noticed with the Book of Mormon. This last time I read through it, the prophet asked us to study the Book of Mormon and look for promises given to covenant Israel. Um, and we are Israel. The prophet has told us very plainly that we're the the covenant people of the Lord are us. So it's a very deliberate book. It's built directly for us. So in his talk in General Conference, President Nelson said, as you study the scriptures during the next 6 months, I encourage you to make a list of all that the Lord has promised he will do for covenant Israel. I think you will be astounded. Ponder these promises, talk with them about your family and friends, then live and watch for these promises to be fulfilled in your own life. So as I read, thinking about this, I did make a list. I have a very large, exhaustive list of everything that felt like promised language. And if you want, you can email me and I can share that with you. But this book is 4 times refined, at least 4 times. Initially, the prophets wrote it with the inspiration of the Holy Ghost. So they're already starting off just inspired stories, inspired men and women, and it's already starting there. It's not meant to be historical. It tells us that a number of times. Nephi asked specifically to keep the best teachings in it, the more important ones. So there'll be very little repetition unless it's purposeful. Mormon collected them and said that he knew who we were. He saw us. He understood our day. He understood our actions. And so he went through the already very purposeful record and selected the parts that he thought would be most important for us. Then Joseph Smith, he had no real language ability for writing. And he had no ability to translate on his own. So the words that are picked are not based on knowledge or understanding or anything else. It's directly inspiration from the Lord. So the words and the phrasings are correct. So that's part of the refining of this book. So we just have to look at this book as a very deliberate, very purposeful, very custom-made book for us. Again, it's not a historical book. They tell us many, many times there's less than 1%. I just did a little math for fun. If a general Book of Mormon, like one that's just all by itself, is an inch thick, if many times it says that there's less than 1% that's been recorded, if that was true, then it would be 42 feet thick if they were able to do more than, at least, well, if it was about 100%. Anyway, just of interest. This graph is kind of the basis of the rest of the talk, for the most part. The left side of those columns is the percent of the length of the book in the total Book of Mormon. The right column is the percent of time that the Book of Mormon covers, that book covers. So, most of the time we have long books that cover short times, and we have short books that cover long times. And we'll talk about each one of these as we go through. They seem to have kind of greater than, less than, and equal signs. So Nephi is kind of the ground setter. He kind of is the one that sets the tone, sets the covenants. Almost a quarter of the book is taken up by 1st and 2nd Nephi, but only 5% of the total historical time. I'm not going to get these exactly right. This is just illustrative. It's not to do math, okay? There's a lot of writings, not in a lot of time. So about 25% of the first book of Nephi is his look vision. It's the same vision that John had that became the book of Revelations. And 22%, 22 pages, about 30% of Second Nephi is Isaiah. Okay. This vision that he had showed the future. He saw kind of everything from that time forward, and talked about seeing the Lord be born, see his people fail, but importantly, he saw our day and the last days and the second coming. And then he said, I was going to write all of it, but then the Lord told me John was going to write it. He also spends, again, like I said, a lot of time on Isaiah. There's a lot of quotations of Isaiah in 1st and 2nd Nephi. There's a little bit in Mosiah. And in 3rd Nephi, the Lord himself quotes Isaiah. So this is very, very important. We'll talk about this again a little bit later in the talk, but Isaiah's teachings talk about his day and ours, and it's just full of covenants, full of promised language. And it's good, almost practical warning for what's going to come. This is the book of Jacob. It's 0.5% of the total Book of Mormon. It covers more time than Nephi's books, but in 10% of the space. What he generally talks about, the two big things, again, these are just generalizations, so we don't spend 40 hours talking about this. He talks about the olive tree, and he gives us our first Antichrist, which it's the gathering, and an Antichrist we'll talk about here again in just a second. Enos, Jared, and Omni cover 35% of the history timeline, but they cover a very, very, very small percentage of the actual book. Most of what they talk about they say we had lots of prophets and prophesying, and they don't really give a lot of them. And it says that there were lots of wars with the Lamanites, and they don't really describe them. But Alma has lots of wars with Lamanites. So if war with Lamanites is kind of a message, why don't we have more of them? We'll talk about that. So Omni was a very, very small book, and almost half of it was talking about Mosiah. And Mosiah covers about 5% of history, but takes up a bunch of pages, as you can see. That means what Mosiah has in it is important. He's got stories inside of stories. And I would urge you, if you are wondering where we are, I think Mosiah has a lot to offer. And I kind of just ran through this just for fun for people. You've got a story of the regular Nephite people, and Zeniff leaves the regular Nephites, and Zeniff becomes Noah's people. Alma leaves Noah's people and makes a people, and then a bad priest leaves Noah's people and makes a people. Limhi stays and makes a people from Noah's people and finds evidence of Jaredites. Ammon, not the guy that cuts off the arms of the Lamanites, leaves the regulars, finds Limhi, and leads them out. Alma gets found by the bad priests and are led back to the regulars. And then you go back to the irregular story with the occasional intermixing from the bad priest story. Not super illustrated, it's just kind of funny. Limhi's story, though, is important. And it's kind of an archetype for the rest of at least for the point that I want to make with what we're doing today. A lot of people leave their traditional land of inheritance to seek another land, just like Abraham, just like Nephi, just like Joseph Smith. They get to the land, they prosper, but bad leadership causes poor preparation of the people. We see this over and over again with Antichrist, with dissenters. Pharaoh did it with the children of Israel. We have social media. Take your pick. Captivity befalls the people, and trials, just like Egypt, the early saints, the Nephites, and soon to be us. They try to fight their way out. They 3 different times come back wounded and lost. A lot of people. Finally, Ammon comes and is an inspired person and helps lead them away, along with Gideon. The Alma story is quite different. Okay, it's a very different group. He hears a prophet and then becomes truly converted, and he starts to proselyte and teach, and those people are humble before anything really starts. They have a leader that was once one of them. They have this bad priest that was a Nephite. But they submit, they follow the Lord's teachings, they follow the Lord's prophet, and they walk out, taking no losses and no violence. Nephi, Mosiah, and a lot of the scriptures are full of references to Moses, okay, because it's the same story. So why repeat it so many times? That's the question I have for you. Just think about it. Alma covers the most pages. It's the longest one. Almost a little over a third of the whole Book of Mormon. But less than 4% of the timeline. So this story is everything. And the story is there's a people that establish a humble situation. They prosper. Bad ideas creep in, like Antichrist, Kingman, or dissenters, or whatever. Well, then it gets contention and then dissent. And then war with Lamanites that is led by dissenters from them. They become humbled, and then it happens again. This is the story of Alma. The repetition is not to try and give us this sense of like, oh, it happens over and over and over and over and over and over, and it will always turn out okay. It's to show and highlight the story of one person. This is also a theme, like that you need to pick up from the Book of Mormon. There's promises to one person that if you will stand up and you will do what you're supposed to do, that the Lord will work with you and do marvelous works through you. And there's not a better example than Captain Moroni. The idea that if every man was like him, Satan would have no power over the children of men. You can't get better than that. He's a great example of that. Okay, so you get to Helaman in the first part of 3rd Nephi. The time covered is almost the same as the amount of record that it takes. So he's really focusing on allowing those things to happen real time, so to speak, in the Book of Mormon, which means they're very important, okay? And the story is the real onset and uprising of secret combinations. And you hear about it earlier, and they're on and off again, but this is when it affects the Nephites as a whole. Hugh Nibley talks about maybe a lot of Nephites joining the secret combinations just to keep up. But for the most part, they are not the government, okay? But they do take over the government. Both the Lamanites and the Nephites get involved. When they come among the Lamanites, they're hunted down, the gospel is preached at them, or they're driven out. They're not tolerated. But the Nephites like them. They really lean in with them, and they join up. And I would put forward to you that there's a great lie in that we can do both things, that we can make money and abuse or use other people as long as everything seems okay. That's a whole other talk. But with these secret combinations, the church dwindles and struggles. Okay, the Nephites are defeated a few times. There's amazing works done by prophets, amazing sets of prophecies. There's some wins, but robbers take over. Famine sets in instead of war. There's a Lamanite promise, and there's a sign the signs really start to appear. It gets to the point in 3rd Nephi where the Nephites and Lamanites, that they have to gather together. Everyone that isn't a robber has to gather together. The central government fails, natural disasters and signs just abound, and there's just wholesale destruction. Then the Lord comes. He teaches them higher covenants, Zion. They lead a millennial type life. He heals them, he blesses them. There are other heavenly beings that visit and teaches things that they otherwise wouldn't have. He brings with them. And he says, a commandment I give unto you, that ye search these things diligently, for great are the words of Isaiah. For surely he spake as touching all things concerning my people which are of the house of Israel, which is us. Therefore it must needs be that we must speak also to the Gentiles, both. And all things that he spake have been and shall be, even according to the words which he spake. So let's think about that for just a little bit. This is the very pinnacle of the Book of Mormon. This is the very apex of everything that we've talked about. Okay? He is God. He governs and created all known creation. Untold amounts of planets and orbits and puppies and sunflowers. He knows who you are, and he knows what time that was. And he said, yea, a commandment I give unto you, that you search these things diligently. For surely he spake as touching all things. And all things that he spake have been and shall be. We really need to study Isaiah. There's 19 chapters of Isaiah in the Book of Mormon, and little segments and references and parts in other places. The Lord also, instead of directly quoting him and saying it was him, just paraphrases him. Nephi takes a lot of time to tell us about how special Isaiah's prophecies are, and the direct quote from the Lord. Isaiah's words work for his people and for our people. Okay? It is the guideposts and the warnings and the promises for us. It is sort of the apex teachings from the Book of Mormon. Okay, these are fractals. Okay, this is math. These are beautiful. Everything you see there is the same shape, just repeated over and over and over and over. As you zoom in and look closer and closer and closer, it's all the same shape. Same with this. And this is what Isaiah is. It's over and over and over again, a beautiful replacement and re-establishment of the same pattern. We will see what Isaiah promised, what he taught. We've got to be familiar with it, or it will take us by surprise. Okay, we have to wake up, we have to see, we have to look around. So, what is the story in general? All right. 1st Nephi and 2nd Nephi establish the covenants. You see the story of bondage and tribulations in these people. There are some amount of prosperity, then antichrists and dissenters. There's war against enemies that is led by those dissenters, secret combinations, fall of society. The Lord comes. He establishes higher covenants, Zion, and the millennial life. The major promise, the major covenant that I found over and over and over again is those who live here and obey God's commands will be afflicted with bondage and trial. If during that time they remain faithful and do not forget the Lord and what he's done for their fathers, they will build a city and a society, and the Lord will come after he has delivered them by a Moses. So you have to think about it like maybe if it was a different story. So, 1st and 2nd Nephi, there's establishment of who everyone is, what the intention is. There's introduction of problems, introduction of conflict. There's foreshadowing of future issues. There is some wars and some loss. Okay, and then we see this establishment of the wrong government. These people have to flee, and they establish a different society. Somewhat prosperous, does okay. Then there are Moseses that come back, leaders, people that come back to help them return to what is important. There is individual ones that can teach and make the difference. There is war with dissenters, people that should be one of us that lead war against our people. We fight them. There's war with them. Okay. There is secret combinations and war with that. Okay. And I've got a couple of gifts there for fun. Oops, sorry. I should give that more time. The central government seems to collapse. Okay, and then it looks like wholesale destruction just there in the bottom on Pride Rock. Okay, and then he comes back. All right, there's a better life and a Zion people that lead a new and whole and healthy society. And my oldest son wanted me to include this. He thought this was hilarious. So, a little break. Okay. I think we're in the last prosperous time before a fall. I wrote this a few months ago. I just haven't shared it. Even in those intervening months, we've become closer to a fall, I believe. I think we're heading to some form of captivity with burdens and afflictions. I think we'll see laws. As a Gadianton and the situation settles in more, we will start to see more and more laws restricting our freedom, especially probably worship. And I think we'll see famine and war. The Lord is coming. We are in the last time. The stories and the teachings of the Book of Mormon are for us. And they give us a precise example of what is going to happen. Go ahead and email me if you want. the.tyler.warner@gmail.com. I'll answer your... I think it's attached to my YouTube there. You can probably email me there too. Thank you.